Hello, and welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from church past. I'm your host, Laura. Join me today as we explore a piece of Kansas City's history. Hello listeners, thank you so much for your patience with this episode. I had originally planned for it to be out a few weeks ago, but I was busy and then I was out of town for my nephew's 5th birthday, and then I lost power for a few days due to a massive storm, so I ended up a bit behind my self-imposed schedule, but that's a good thing about podcasting is you're just doing it whenever you can. This is Topic 3, Sacred Ground, of Series 5, People of the Island. Please make sure to listen to Topic 1, The Evil Isms, and Topic 2, The Long Journey of this series. I'm calling this series People of the Island because that is what the Wyandottes call themselves. That's what their name means in their language. I also want to note here that according to the Wyandotte Nation's official website, their traditional tribal name for themselves is actually Wyandotte, or Wyandotte, and Wyandotte is the English version of it. But I'm going to stick with Wyandotte throughout this series because that is what they call themselves now. Before we begin, I also want to make clear that these episodes should in no way be considered a definitive history of these people. I am not the authority on Wyandotte history, they are their own authority. But I had the opportunity to help tell their story, and I also had the opportunity to speak with 2nd Chief Louis Libby of the Wyandotte Nation of Kansas. That conversation has been available to my patron listeners for the past couple months. And on June 1st, just a couple days from now, it is going to be available to everyone. Lastly, there is a content warning for this series. I won't get graphic, but there are discussions of slavery, genocide, and other tangential subjects which may be difficult for some. Thank you. So, let's get started. Today, we are going to dive into the history of the Wyandotte National Burial Ground in KCK. So remember in the last episode, The Long Journey Part 2, when the tribe first arrived at Kansas City in 1842-1843, they were promised this wide swath of land around Westport, but the boat captain bypassed that port entirely and he dropped them off in the West Bottoms instead, which is a few miles further down the river. In that area, if y'all have listened to my 2 episodes on the Kansas City stockyards, you'll remember that the ground is really low, and it floods a lot. It didn't flood that winter that they first arrived, but they had little food, water, basically no shelter. I mean, what they had was completely insufficient for their needs. So of the 600 people that came down the river from Sandusky, 100 died within those first few months. In the spring, the Delawares sold them land on the Kansas side of the river, and the first thing they decided to do was establish a cemetery in order to bury their loved ones. So think about this for a second. You have no house, no infrastructure, still have very little food. The very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to dig up your dead from their temporary resting place, take them across the river, and rebury them. The very first thing. That's how important this cemetery was to the Wyandottes. Well, they're just living their lives after that, establishing their settlement. Then the conflict begins. And that's conflict with a capital C, because it's a big deal. Starting in about 1890, various groups and corporations, even the Kansas governor, start looking about and they decide, hey, it's a nice piece of land you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it. Do you want to sell it? Yeah, you want to sell? No, right? No. Well, the answer should be no. I was super surprised to learn that the Oklahoma tribe, because remember I talked about this in the last episode, the tribe split again in 1857 after the Treaty of 1855, which had eliminated their tribal status and had made them citizens. A couple years later, Big group of them decide, F this, we want to be Native Americans. We don't want to be U.S. citizens. We're going to go to Oklahoma. They got a nice reservation for us. And y'all know that's a lie. There's no land in Oklahoma. But that's what they decided to do, so that's what they did. And so the Oklahoma tribe, they have no money in Oklahoma. They have no land. They bought some land from the Seneca tribe. They are super, super broke. And therefore, they are in favor of selling the land that the cemetery sits on up here in KCK. And it's actually members of the Kansas tribe that fight so hard and so long. This is a multi-decade long battle in order to protect this land, the resting place of their family members and ancestors. So everybody, I mean, even Congress gets on this, going back and forth. Yes, you have permission. I can't sell it. I don't have permission. And okay, I want to, but whatever is stopping me. Go back and forth for about 16 years. And then in 1906, the Secretary of the Interior, because the Kansas tribe are American citizens, they fall under the authority of the Secretary of the Interior. He is told, you have one job. Sell this land. One job. That's all you gotta do. And everyone in the cemetery will be moved to Quindaro Cemetery. So that's it. There's no more hemming and hawing. This land will be sold. In step the Conley sisters. So most of the stories that you'll hear focus on Eliza Conley, and for good reason. She is a total badass babe. I have this informal sort of list going on in my head of amazing women in Kansas City history, and she is top 10. In step these sisters, and I'm going to do my best to tell you about all of them equally. We have Eliza, aka Lida, Helena, aka Lena, and Ida. Their parents were Andrew Conley, who was born in 1835 and died in 1885, and Eliza Burton Zane Conley, who was born in 1839 and died in 1879. So, the mama's parents were Hannah Dickinson Zane, born 1794, died 1886, and Isaac Zane Jr. I don't have any dates for him. Andrew was English. He wasn't Native American. His parents were Daniel Conley, 1796 to 1837, and Deborah Hanford Conley, 1793 to unknown. And I'm thinking maybe it's because the Wyandottes are traditionally a matriarchal society, but it was a lot easier for me to follow the maternal bloodlines than the paternal. That's a nice change of pace. And the three girls actually had a fourth sister. The eldest, Sarah McIntyre Conley, was born in 1861, but she died March 3rd, 1880. She was only about 18 when she passed. Ida was the next born. She was born in 1863, and she lived 84 years, dying in October of 1948. Then there was Helena, born in 1867, and she lived until September of 1955, died at age 90. And then finally, the baby of the family is Lida, born in 1874, and she lived until May of 46. She was 71 when she died. So, the trajectory of her life actually makes a lot of sense when you think that she's the youngest, because she really fought for her beliefs. I mean, they all did, but the way in which she fought for hers seems very youngest sibling to me. So, in 1890, when this battle first begins, Mama and Papa and Sister Sarah, they're already gone. Ida is 27, Helena is 23, and Lida is only 16. Their parents, grandparents, their sister, cousins, like everybody that they know is buried in the cemetery. This is sacred ground, and these girls are going to do everything that they can to defend it. Helena and Lida both go to college, and there's a story that they took a little canoe and rowed across the river every day to attend Park University. And since, they're living on the Kansas side of the river, not in Parkville, I totally believe it. In 1902, now age 28, Lida graduated from the Kansas City School of Law and passed the bar in Missouri. And then she passed the Kansas bar in 1910. She was one of the first women to get her degree from the School of Law. And this is one of the reasons why the story often focuses on her, is because she's a lawyer. I couldn't find anything that said when the school started allowing women to attend, but I did find something that said that it was not founded until 1872. So, this is just a few short years later. I imagine there hadn't been very many women before this. Anyway, once it's cleared that the land is going to be sold, so now we're back in 1906, the sisters built a little one-room shack on the cemetery grounds, and they declared it Fort Conley. And then for the next several years, decades actually, at least one of the sisters was in residence at all times, 24/7. And they were armed with a shotgun, which they used. That shotgun is now on display at the Wyandotte County Museum in Bonner Springs, Kansas. I'm gonna lose a little bit of street cred for this. I still have not visited that museum. It's been on my list for a year or more since I spoke to Amy Locke, the museum's director. The museum sounds amazing, and especially because of this connection, I really want to go see it. I have not taken the time to do so yet. That I do plan on doing this summer. So watch out for that, because I'll have photos up on all my social pages. But that conversation with Amy, that is available to my Patreon supporters if you're interested. Here's where it gets good, though. So, Lyda is an attorney, and she, quote, filed a permanent injunction against the U.S. Secretary of the Interior and the Indian commissioners in the U.S. District Court to prevent the sale, end quote. And this case, because my understanding is she's like basically suing them or something, is escalated all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in 1910, in 1910, which is when she passed the Kansas bar, she becomes the first Native American woman to argue a case before the Supreme Court. This is the second reason why she is totally badass and the focus of the story. Sadly, they did not win the case, but it turns out it's kind of like losing the battle to win the war. So the court decided in favor of the defendant, which is the Secretary of the Interior. Honestly, I think it's all because they just wanted money. And they decide you can still sell this land. But the Conley sisters continued to live in their shack on the burial grounds. And I think I read, or more likely Chief Libby might have said, that the shack was torn down several times, but then they rebuilt it and rehabbed it each time. They were arrested several times too. There's I think it was a newspaper article all the way up into the 1930s that said that one of them was arrested. But they're not going to give up. And Lyda's case had caught the attention of the Kansas Senator Charles Curtis. So in 1913, he, quote, passed a law protecting the cemetery from future development, end quote. I think he basically declared it a historic landmark, but only at the state level. So it's protected, but not entirely. And this is not the end of our story, but it is where I'm going to stop today, because it turns out I had a lot to say, and it was too much for one episode I had to cut into, and I'm just now seeing that this is a very short episode because I'm only at 13 minutes. Anyways, so we are going to stop here. It's a good stopping place, and you'll see why in the next episode. Sources. A lot of my sources for this episode, they're the same as the previous ones. Special collections at KCK P&L, the KCK P&L, also the talks with Chief Libby that I attended. There's that video of John Nichols and Ty Edwards, which I'm going to link to on my website once I finally get the website built. I also used findagrave.com and the National Women's History Museum, which has a page on Lyda, which is super awesome. And the Kansas City Public Library, that's the museum, the Missouri Kansas City Public Library. They also have a webpage all about Lyda, and it's written by Cara Evans Flynn. It's very good. The Clio .com, which is a website, it is open sourced, so it is created by multiple people across the nation, mostly educators of one type or another, also writers and newspaper people. What do you call them? Newspaper writers. Sorry, totally blanking. Anyways, they all have submitted, information on historical and cultural sites throughout America. And so Clio.com also has a webpage on Wyandotte, which was really cool. So the links that I'm going to have on my website are a video tour of the burial ground given by Principal Chief of the Wyandotte Nation of Kansas, Judith Manthe, sorry, I think it's pronounced Manthe, who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, but she sounds wonderful. Also, the Kansas statutes regarding unmarked burials, the Kansas State Preservation Law, and NAGPRA law, which all of this I'm going to talk about in part 2. Also, as I said, the talk hosted by the Kansas City, Kansas Public Library between John Nichols and Ty Edwards. I hope that you will consider becoming a financial supporter of the show if you are enjoying this content. There are several ways you can do so. You can subscribe to patreon.com/homegrownkc or redcircle.com/homegrownkc. If you simply want to give a one-time donation, you can do so at redcircle.com/homegrownkc or ko-fi.com/homegrownkc. That's ko-fi.com. And you can give as little or as much as you want, even as little as $1. Here's how it works. When you sign up and create an account and subscribe to become a monthly supporter, you'll be charged on that day and then on the first of every month following. And if you become a patron, you get some cool stuff. 1, you get access to bonus episodes featuring other local historians, archivists, museum experts. 2, you get a shout out on each episode and social media post. So thank you, Bjorn, Joan, and Gina, for your continued support. And you receive an item from the merchandise store valued at $5 or less. If you simply give a one-time donation, you do not get anything from the merch store and you do not get access to my Patreon episodes, but I will give you a shout out on the next episode. Additionally, 1% of every donation given on Ko-fi will automatically go to help fight climate change. I know that we're all tight money-wise right now, because the war in Ukraine is making inflation prices rise everywhere. But that's why, if you can support me, I could really use your help. Planning on a lot of adventures this summer. That'll be content for you as I create, what's the word I'm looking for? As I go to on these adventures and take photos, but I'm also going to make mini-sodes out of some of them. And every little bit that you guys can give me will help pay for the gas to get around the city. We had the first City History Festival about a month ago on April 30th, and I just wanted to actually take a moment to give a shout out to everyone who came out to that festival, and a thank you to everyone who stopped by the booth and spoke with me. It was hella cold and hella windy. We had like 30-mile-an-hour winds that day. So it was really awesome to see how many of y'all came out, because there was quite a few. You can visit my website for additional information. That's homegrownkc.wordpress.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter there. It'll be once a month. About the first of every month, you'll get an email that says, hey, here's what's going on with the podcast. Here's what's new and upcoming. So it's a great way to just stay current. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or episode suggestions, you can email me at homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com, or you can slide into one of my DMs on all the social networks: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, Tumblr. I also have a YouTube channel. Please follow and subscribe me on all of those. You can go to zazzle.com/store/homegrown_kc_store to see what's available. I have t-shirts, tank tops, that's great with summer coming, hats, socks. I think I have a mask if you're needing one of those. What else? Some coffee mugs, beer glasses, etc. And that's zazzle.com/store/homegrown_kc_store. Thank you goes out to my talented sister-in-law, Sarah McCombs, for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music of the show, and local libraries which enabled me to gather all my research. Thank you for listening. Cheers.
Had to ask you this tonight, 'cause I can't seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. I've lost my nerve forever, and I know that it's now or never to try and see this through. Tie loose ends up with a bow and start anew. We could talk through the nights on